I took the Bear Mountain job because Tucson wouldn't let me breathe anymore. That's the simple version. The real one's messier. Manuel Bravo got pinned under a forklift at the Avis rental yard back in March. His leg broke in 2 places. I was driving. The investigation took 6 weeks and came back saying I'd rushed the turn near the stacked tire pallets, that I hadn't waited for the spotter signal, that Manuel shouldn't have been standing where he was, but I shouldn't have moved when I did. Most of the blame landed on me. Not all of it. Just enough. Manuel didn't talk to me after he got out of the hospital. I tried once. He looked past my shoulder and said he had physical therapy. That was it. I kept working the yard another month. Nobody said anything directly, but the shift supervisor stopped putting me on the forklifts. I got assigned to inventory counts and tire rotation, indoor stuff, safe stuff. I started waking up at 4 in the morning with my jaw clenched so hard my teeth hurt. When I saw the posting for a fire lookout in the Gila National Forest, I filled out the application same day. Seasonal position, May through September, solo assignment. They wanted someone with a clean record, which I technically still had because the yard incident got filed as an accident, not negligence. I sent it in and didn't think about it. 2 weeks later, I got the call. District Ranger Naomi McCormick picked me up from the Silver City Ranger Station on a Tuesday morning in early May. She drove a white Forest Service truck with mud caked halfway up the doors and a dent in the rear bumper that looked intentional. I'd met her once during the hiring interview. She'd asked maybe 10 questions, most of them about whether I could handle isolation and whether I had medical conditions that required regular access to a pharmacy. She didn't ask about Tucson, didn't ask about Manuel. I figured either she didn't know or didn't care. The road up to Bear Mountain wasn't really a road. It was more like a suggestion someone had carved into the hillside a long time ago, and nobody had bothered to improve. We climbed through ponderosa pine that smelled sharp and clean, then higher into mixed conifer, and finally scrub that clung low to the rocks. Naomi drove without talking much. The truck bounced hard over ruts and exposed stones. I kept one hand braced on the ceiling grip. "You get sick easy?" she asked about halfway up. "No." "Good. Road's worse after snowmelt." I didn't ask what happened if I needed to come down in an emergency. Seemed like the kind of question that'd make her reconsider the whole thing. We reached the tower just before noon. It sat on a bald granite summit surrounded by nothing but sky and a few scattered trees that looked like they'd given up trying to grow. The tower itself was maybe 40 feet tall, steel frame painted white and rust, with a small cabin perched on top. Stairs switchbacked up in a zigzag. The wind hit steady and cold even though the sun was bright. Naomi killed the engine. "Supplies are already up there. Water gets delivered every 2 weeks, radioed in advance. You're responsible for your own food between drops." "Okay." She climbed out, and I followed. My duffel bag held everything I'd brought. 2 changes of clothes, a jacket, a paperback I'd grabbed from a little free library in Silver City, toiletries, a notebook I probably wouldn't use. That was it. The stairs rattled under our boots. Naomi went first. I counted 48 steps, split across 6 landings. The higher we got, the more the wind pushed. By the time we reached the cabin door, I could feel it trying to shove me sideways. Inside was smaller than I expected, maybe 12 feet by 12 feet. Windows on all sides, a narrow bed against the south wall, a desk with a radio and a laminated map under plexiglass, a propane stove, a mini fridge that hummed loud, shelves with canned food and bottled water, a fire finder mounted in the center of the room. Everything smelled like dust and old wood, and something faintly chemical I couldn't place. Naomi walked me through it. "Radio check twice daily, 0800 and 1800. Weather log every hour during high fire risk, every 3 otherwise. Firefinders calibrated, don't touch the base. If you spot smoke, call it in immediately with azimuth and estimated distance. Don't wait to confirm." I nodded. She kept going. Shutters get closed and latched if you leave or if wind tops 50. Propane lasts about 3 weeks if you're not an idiot. There's a rain barrel on the north side for washing. Don't drink it. Bathroom's the outhouse down the stairs, 20 yards west. Got it. She pulled a laminated card from her jacket pocket and set it on the desk. It had a list printed in small block letters. I caught a few lines. No personal vehicles beyond base camp. No alcohol on duty. Report all wildlife encounters. Rules, she said. Read them. Follow them. They're the only reason I still have staff up here. That phrasing stuck with me a little. The only reason, not one of the reasons. Understood, I said. She looked at me for a second, and I got the sense she was deciding whether to say something else. She didn't. She just tugged her cap down and headed for the door. You'll do fine if you keep your head down and do the job. That's all this is. Yes, ma'am. She went down the stairs without looking back. I stood at the window and watched her get into the truck, turn it around, and disappear back down the road. The sound of the engine faded fast. Then it was just wind. I stood there longer than I needed to. The view went on forever. Ridges and valleys and patches of green and gray all the way to the horizon. No roads, no buildings, not a soul around. This was supposed to be a clean reset. That's what I'd told myself. Get out of Tucson. Get away from the yard. Spend a summer doing something simple and useful. Watch for smoke. Log the weather. Keep my head down. I picked up the laminated card and read through the rules. Most of them made sense. Some were oddly specific. No food waste left outside designated containers. No unscheduled descents without radio clearance. Maintain log accuracy at all times. I set it back down and started learning the layout for real. Checked the cabinets. The canned food was generic stuff, beans and chili and soup and peaches. The propane stove had 2 burners and a box of matches in the drawer underneath. The fridge held a gallon of milk that'd expire in 4 days, a stick of butter, and a jar of pickles. The shutters were mounted on the outside of each window, hinged at the top, held open with hooks. I unhooked one on the east side to see how it worked. It dropped fast and banged hard. I latched it, then opened it again. Simple enough. The weather log was a spiral notebook on the desk, entries going back weeks in different handwriting. Temperature, wind speed, cloud cover, visibility. I checked the thermometer mounted outside the north window. 53 degrees. The wind gauge read 15 miles per hour, gusting higher. Sky was clear. I wrote it all down. My handwriting looked shaky next to the previous guy's block print. Late afternoon, I went down the stairs to check the outhouse and get a sense of the area. The outhouse was exactly what I expected. Small, wooden, functional. The door didn't latch right. I made a mental note to fix it if I could find a screwdriver. On the way back up, I spotted something on the 3rd step. A coin. Clean, bright. Maybe the size of a $1 coin, but lighter. I crouched and picked it up. It had text stamped around the edge. Sunset Arcade. In the center was a cartoon sun with a goofy grin. I turned it over. The back was blank. I stood there holding it, trying to figure out how it got there. Naomi hadn't dropped it, or I would have heard it hit the metal step while we were coming up. The wind couldn't have carried it up from below and placed it flat like that. Someone else had been here recently. Maybe the guy before me. Or maybe Naomi left it on purpose. A test. See if I'd radio it in, or pocket it, or leave it where it was. I pocketed it. Probably stupid. But it felt stupider to call her about a random arcade token. I climbed the rest of the way and went back inside. The sun was starting to drop. I checked my watch. 5:47. Almost time for the evening radio check. At 6, I sat down at the desk and picked up the mic. The radio was already set to the right channel. I pressed the button. Bear Mountain Lookout to dispatch. Radio check. Static, then a woman's voice. Not Naomi. Younger, flatter. Dispatch to Bear Mountain, read you clear. All good up there? All good. Copy. Stay sharp. The line went quiet. I set the mic down and stared at the radio for a second. That was it. My first official check-in. Nobody asked my name. Didn't ask for a single thing. I heated a can of chili on the stove and ate it standing at the west window, watching the light turn orange and then purple over the ridges. The wind hadn't let up. It made a low, rattling sound against the shutters. I kept telling myself nothing was wrong. This was normal. First day jitters. New place, new job, new routine. The coin didn't mean anything. Naomi's phrasing didn't mean anything. The rules were just rules. I finished the chili and washed the pot in the barrel water outside. My hands went numb fast. I dried them on my jeans and went back in. The cabin felt smaller once the sun was gone. I sat on the bed and pulled the coin out of my pocket. Turned it over a few times. Sunset Arcade. I didn't know if that was a real place or just something someone made up. I set it on the desk next to the laminated rule card and lay down with my boots still on. The wind kept going. I kept my eyes open and watched the dark press against the windows. This was supposed to be simple. I was lying on the bed when the radio clicked on. 11:17 at night. I know because I checked my watch right after. The click was loud in the quiet, that hard mechanical snap of a relay switching. Then static, real soft, and a voice came through. Station 0 to Bear Mountain Lookout. I sat up. The voice was calm, professional, same tone dispatch used during the afternoon check. Bear Mountain, please confirm your current location and status. I stared at the radio. The little red transmit light wasn't on, just the green power indicator. Nobody was supposed to call at 11:17. Radio checks were 800 and 1800. That was it. The voice waited. Patient. I swung my legs off the bed and crossed to the desk in 3 steps. My hand went to the mic, fingers wrapping around the grip. Standard procedure. Someone calls, you answer. Then I stopped. My eyes dropped to the laminated card Naomi left. The rules were printed in bullet points, black text on white. I'd read them twice already, but I scanned again, faster this time. Third bullet down. Non-scheduled radio contact, mute set, and wait for verification protocol. I let go of the mic. My other hand found the mute switch instead. Small toggle on the left side of the radio housing. I flipped it down and the static cut to nothing. The cabin went totally quiet. That's when the floor started. Thump. One hit. From below. Not loud, but solid, like someone punching the underside of the floorboards with the flat of their hand. I stepped back from the desk. Thump. Again. Same spot, I thought. Maybe 10 feet from where I stood. The sound traveled up through the boards, through my boots. Thump. Even spacing. Steady. My chest tightened and I realized I was timing my breathing to it without meaning to. I checked my watch. 11:18. The thumping kept going. Slow rhythm. Not random. It felt like a heartbeat, kind of, but too deliberate, too measured. The whole tower frame hummed with it. Just barely. I could feel the vibration in the desk when I touched the edge. I thought about going to the window, looking down, but I didn't. Instead, I stood there and made myself count. 1, 2, 3. Back in Tucson when something went wrong, I fixed it. That was the job. Forklift makes a noise, you stop and check. Tire pressure drops, you pull it and swap it out. Manuel used to joke I couldn't leave a problem alone if you paid me. He said it the week before the accident. We were rotating a set of Michelin All Seasons, and one of the mounting bolts stripped. I spent 20 minutes with a drill bit and extractor instead of just grabbing a replacement from stock. Manuel laughed and said I was going to die trying to unjam a jammed thing someday. He wasn't laughing after March. 4, 5, 6. The thumping didn't change, didn't speed up or slow down, just kept hitting. I wanted to flip the mute off, key the mic, ask what the hell Station 0 wanted, ask who they were, but the card said wait, so I waited. My jaw hurt. I unclenched it. 7. 8. The coin was still on the desk next to the rule card. I could see the cartoon sun grinning in the light from my headlamp. I'd left it there after dinner. Now I picked it up and shoved it in my pocket. Didn't know why. Just wanted it off the desk. 9. The thumping stopped. I waited another 30 seconds. Nothing. No sound except wind brushing the shutters. I checked my watch again. 11:27. 9 minutes near enough. My hand hovered over the mute switch. I didn't want to flip it. Didn't want to hear what came next. But standing there doing nothing felt worse. I toggled it up. Static returned. Then my own voice came through the speaker. Bear Mountain Lookout, current location confirmed, routine status, no smoke, no visitors, weather clear. My stomach dropped. That was my voice. Exactly my voice. Same flat tone I used during the evening check with dispatch. Same phrasing, but I hadn't said it. The transmission cut, static again, then nothing. I stared at the radio. The green light stayed steady. No red transmit indicator. No follow-up. I stood there for probably 2 minutes just breathing, waiting for something else. My legs felt weird, loose. Nothing else came. I sat down in the desk chair. It creaked. I didn't touch the mic. Didn't touch anything. Just sat. After a while, I turned off my headlamp and stayed in the dark. The cabin cooled. I pulled my jacket tighter. My mind kept trying to make sense of it. Some kind of recorder malfunction, maybe. A loop. Dispatch testing something without telling me. But dispatch didn't sound like me, and I hadn't given that exact report tonight. I thought about the coin, about Naomi saying the rules were the only reason she still had staff up here. I didn't sleep. Morning came with clear skies. I checked the thermometer at 6:30, 49 degrees. Wind gauge said 12 miles per hour, steady. Visibility went on forever. Just ridge after ridge of ponderosa and granite cutting west. The relief was shaky, but real. Daylight made the cabin normal again. Propane stove, canned goods, weather log, everything right where it belonged. I heated water for instant coffee, drank it black standing at the east window. My hands were steadier than I expected. At 0800, I did the radio check. Same younger woman from yesterday answered. She said Bear Mountain, clear, and I said clear, and that was it. I pulled the logbook over after and flipped to a new page. The entries from the previous lookout were still there above mine. Neat handwriting, every line filled in with time and temp and notes. I wrote the date. Then, radio glitch, 2317 Erchers. Non-scheduled transmission, followed mute protocol per card. I stared at it. Glitch wasn't the right word. But I didn't have a better one. I capped the pen and closed the book. The rest of the morning I spent scanning, sectioned the view into quadrants and worked them one at a time with the binoculars Naomi left in the desk drawer. Nothing moved except wind in the trees, no smoke, no haze, just green and rock and sky. I made myself eat around noon. Canned peaches, straight from the tin. They were fine. The coin stayed in my pocket. I didn't take it out, but I felt it every time I moved. It sat there heavier than it should, pressed against my thigh through the fabric. I told myself it was just metal, just some arcade token somebody left. Probably nothing. But my hand kept going to my pocket, checking. I kept scanning. I needed a pencil. Not really, I had a pen, 2 of them in the desk drawer. But my brain kept insisting I needed a pencil, something to do with my hands that wasn't staring at the radio or checking my pocket for the 100th time to make sure the coin was still there. So I started opening drawers. The desk had 3. Top one held the pens, a roll of duct tape, and a small first aid kit still shrink-wrapped. Middle drawer had the binoculars, a compass in a cracked leather case, and some spare AA batteries still in the package. Bottom drawer stuck a little when I pulled. I had to wiggle it. Maps inside. Topographic sheets for the district, folded and refolded until the creases were starting to tear. I lifted them out and set them on the desk. Under those, more batteries. D cells this time, 4 of them rolling loose. A box of wooden matches. And underneath everything, a spiral-bound notebook with a green cover that said Fire Lookout Log in block letters across the front. Not this year's log. That one was on the desk where I'd been writing. I pulled it out and flipped it open. The handwriting inside was different from the neat entries I'd seen in the current book. Smaller, tighter, with some letters squashed together. The name on the first page said J. Kellerman, and the date range ran from May through September last year. Boring stuff, mostly. Temperature readings, wind speed, cloud cover descriptions that got repetitive after a while. Scattered cumulus NW showed up probably 20 times in the first month alone. I flipped faster, scanning for anything that wasn't weather data. June 7th. Deer at any trail junction, 0620 HRs. June 19th. Propane delivery Ramirez. July 2nd. Possible smoke SE Ridge, monitored 40 min, determined campfire legal site. My thumb kept the pages turning. July, August. Nothing but logs and supply notes, and the same careful documentation I'd been doing. Kellerman was thorough. I'd give him that. Then I hit August 23rd. The entry was underlined, twice, heavy enough that the pen had dug into the paper and left an impression on the page underneath. If you pick it up, it knows your hand. That was it, all caps, no context before or after. The next entry was August 24th, back to normal. Temp 67, wind SW APO, clear. I read it again. My hand went to my pocket. The coin was there, smooth and round and warmer than it should have been from body heat. I'd picked it up yesterday on the stairs. Flat on the step, clean and bright, and I'd just grabbed it without thinking. The warning felt aimed straight at me. I stood there holding the old logbook, staring at those capital letters, and my jaw was doing that thing again, where it locked up without permission. I had to force it loose. Probably nothing. Probably Kellerman had a weird day, got spooked by something, wrote a cryptic note because people do that sometimes when they're alone too long. Probably didn't mean anything. Except Naomi had said the rules were the only reason she still had staff up here. Past tense on had. And now I was reading a log from someone who wasn't here anymore. Someone who'd underlined a warning hard enough to scar the paper. I closed the notebook and put it back in the drawer under the maps and batteries. Shut the drawer. Stood up. The cabin felt smaller. I checked my watch. 11:43. I'd been up here scanning all morning, doing the job, acting normal. My coffee mug was still on the desk next to the current logbook where I'd written radio glitch and pretended that covered it. The coin was in my pocket where I kept checking for it. And now I had Kellerman's warning rattling around in my head with everything else. I needed to move. The bear box. I hadn't checked it yet. And Naomi had mentioned it during orientation. Metal storage down near the base for anything that might attract animals. I didn't have food waste yet, but it'd give me a reason to go outside, get some air. Prove to myself the stairs were just stairs, and the forest was just forest. I grabbed my jacket even though it wasn't that cold and headed for the hatch. 48 steps down. 6 landings. I counted them again without meaning to, same way I'd counted the thumps last night. 9 thumps, 9 counts, and I'd stood there frozen instead of checking what made the sound. Not doing that today. The bear box sat about 15 feet from the base of the tower, a green metal container maybe 3 feet tall and 4 feet wide, latched with a heavy-duty lock mechanism that required you to push and twist at the same time. The kind of thing a bear couldn't figure out, but a person could manage one-handed if they'd done it before. I hadn't done it before. Took me 3 tries to get the latch open. When I did, the lid creaked up on stiff hinges, and I looked inside at Nothing. Empty. Clean. A couple of dead leaves in one corner, and that was it. I let the lid drop back down and straightened up, scanning the area. Ponderosa trunks in every direction, some close enough to touch. Granite outcrops breaking through the soil where the slope got steeper. The outhouse 20 yards west, door still busted. No movement except branches shifting in the wind. Normal. I turned back toward the tower, and that's when I saw it. Near the bottom step, third one up, right where I'd found the coin yesterday, a burrito, wrapped in foil, the kind you get from a gas station or maybe someone's kitchen if they're packing lunch. It sat there on the step, just sitting, and I could see steam coming off it where the foil was folded open at one end. Warm. Fresh. For about 2 seconds I felt this rush of relief so strong it made my knees loose. A hiker. Someone had come by, left food. Normal human interaction. Maybe they'd knocked and I hadn't heard from inside the cabin. Maybe they were still nearby and I could call out, have an actual conversation, confirm that the world was still operating on regular logic. I stepped closer. The burrito was definitely warm. I could see the heat shimmer in the shade under the tower frame. Flour tortilla, folded tight, foil crimped at the ends. Someone had made this recently. Very recently. "Hello?" I called out. My voice sounded thin in the open air. Nothing. Just wind in the pines. I walked over and picked it up. Still warm in my hands, solid weight, real. The relief kept flooding through me because this was explainable. A hiker on the trail, maybe someone who'd heard there was a new lookout and wanted to be friendly. People did that kind of thing. I'd heard about it. Trail magic, they called it. Random acts of kindness in the backcountry. I carried it up one step, already thinking I'd take it inside and maybe eat it for lunch, save my canned soup for dinner. My boot hit the second step. Then Rule 2 snapped back into my head like a mousetrap. No food from unknown sources. Report and dispose per protocol. I stopped. Stood there on the second step with the burrito in my hands. Still warm. Still normal. Still explainable. Except Naomi had put that rule on the card for a reason. Same reason she'd put the mute protocol. Same reason Kellerman had written a warning in all caps and underlined it twice. I looked down at the foil in my hands. My thumbs were leaving small dents in it. If you pick it up, it knows your hand. I turned around, went back down the 2 steps, and set the burrito exactly where I'd found it. Placed it careful, like it mattered that it went back in the right spot. Then I stepped away and headed straight for the tower stairs without looking back. 48 steps up. I didn't count this time, just climbed. Inside the cabin, I dropped the hatch and threw the locking bolt. The metal clank echoed in the small space. I'd never locked it before, hadn't even thought about it, but now it felt necessary. A hard perimeter, something I could control. I stood there, breathing harder than the climb warranted, staring at the closed hatch. The relief was gone. Completely. It had lasted maybe 30 seconds total, just long enough for me to feel stupid for wanting it so bad. Now the silence felt heavier. I crossed to the west window and looked down. I could just barely see the bottom step from this angle if I pressed against the glass. The burrito was still there. A small, bright rectangle of foil against dark wood. Nobody came to pick it up. No hiker emerged from the trees to reclaim it. No movement at all except the wind pushing through branches, same as it had been doing since I got here. The tower wasn't making noise. No thumps, no vibrations. Just sitting here, 40 feet of steel frame and wood cabin, quiet and still. Waiting. That's what it felt like. Like something had made an offer and I'd almost taken it, and now it was just waiting to see what I'd do next. I pulled back from the window and sat down at the desk. My hands were shaking a little. Not much, just enough that I noticed. The current logbook was still open to my entry from last night. Radio glitch, 2317 HR's non-scheduled transmission. Followed mute protocol per card. I should probably log the burrito too. Unknown food source reported and left in place. That's what protocol would say. But I didn't pick up the pen. I just sat there while noon came and went, watching the shadows shift across the cabin floor, and the coin in my pocket felt heavier with every minute that passed. I sat at the desk and watched the minute hand on my watch tick past 2 o'clock. The burrito was still down there on the third step. I'd checked the window twice in the last hour, and both times the foil caught the light. My hands were on the desk, just sitting there, palms down on the laminated map. At 2:13 exactly, right in the middle of the afternoon when nothing should happen, my right hand moved. Not a twitch. A full reach toward the binoculars sitting next to the radio. I didn't decide to do it. My fingers just went. I picked them up. The weight was familiar. Black rubber grip worn smooth where someone else's thumbs had been for however many seasons before me. I brought them to my eyes and aimed south before the rest of my brain caught up. The ridge snapped into focus, hard and sharp, like the lenses were too clean or the air was too clear, or something was pulling the distance closer than it should have been. I could see individual pine needles, bark texture. The shadows under the trees were long and black and wrong. They were sliding, not swaying, sliding, uphill, against the sun. The ground looked like it was moving, like the whole ridge was shifting under the trees while the trunks stayed still. My stomach did something it wasn't supposed to do, and I tasted the canned peaches from lunch. Then I saw the person, yellow Nomex shirt, standard issue, the kind fire crews wear, standing between two ponderosas maybe 300 yards out, facing the tower, perfectly still. Not leaning, not shifting weight, just standing there with their arms at their sides, staged. I couldn't see their face. The distance and the shadow made it a blur, but I could see the shirt, bright yellow with the sleeves rolled to the elbows, clean. The person didn't move, didn't wave, didn't do anything a hiker would do if they saw someone watching them through binoculars from a fire tower. I yanked the binoculars down. My hands were shaking and the rubber grip was slick. I shoved them onto the desk and made myself look at the ridge with just my eyes. Empty. No yellow shirt, no person, just trees and rock and the shadows sitting where shadows are supposed to sit in early afternoon. Static. Normal. I stood up. The chair scraped loud against the floorboards, and I didn't care. My chest was tight and my breathing was too fast, and I needed to talk to someone who wasn't here. Someone real. Someone at a desk in Silver City with a headset and a normal job. I grabbed the radio mic and keyed it without thinking about protocol. Silver City Dispatch, this is Bear Mountain. The static hissed for 3 seconds. Then the younger woman's voice came through. The same one from the morning checks. Ruby, probably. I didn't know her last name. Bear Mountain, go ahead. I've got a possible trespasser on the South Ridge, maybe 300 yards out. Someone in fire crew gear. Yellow Nomex shirt. They were just standing there. Pause. Longer than it should have been. Bear Mountain, can you confirm current visual? I looked out the south window again, still empty. Negative. I saw them through binoculars a minute ago. They're not visible now. Another pause. I heard a keyboard clicking faintly behind her voice. Bear Mountain, we have no personnel assigned to your area. No suppression activity. No trail crews. No burn operations within 5 miles of your position. I know what I saw. Likely a hiker. Not our jurisdiction unless they're starting fires. Her tone was flat. Dispatch professional. Is there smoke? No smoke, but this person was wearing our gear. Nomex shirt, standard issue. Surplus stores sell that stuff, Coleman. Hikers buy it because it's durable. She said my last name like she was reading it off a screen. If you see them again, and they're creating a hazard, report it. Otherwise, stay focused on your actual duties. My jaw clenched. I thought about the burrito on the step, The coin in my pocket. The thumping under the floorboards last night. The shadows sliding uphill. What about Station Zero? The static changed. I don't know how to describe it. It was still static, but it felt different. Heavier. Ruby's voice came back quieter. Careful. Say again? Station Zero, the call I got last night at 23:17. Non-scheduled transmission asking for my location and status. Silence. 5 seconds. 10. Dakota. She used my first name now, not Coleman. Do not repeat that designation on an open channel. My stomach dropped. So you know what it is. I know you need to follow the mute protocol if you get another non-standard call. That's it. That's all I'm saying on this frequency. Ruby, Bear Mountain, maintain radio discipline. Contact dispatch for weather, smoke, or medical emergencies only. Acknowledge. I pressed my thumb against the mic button. My hand was still shaking. Acknowledged. Stay sharp, Coleman. The transmission cut. Static filled the cabin, then I flipped the mute switch, and it went silent. I put the mic down. Carefully, like it might break. Ruby knew. She knew what Station Zero was, and she didn't want me saying the name where someone or something might hear it. That reaction wasn't confusion. It wasn't bureaucratic annoyance. It was fear. Which meant this wasn't in my head. It wasn't stress. It wasn't isolation. It wasn't me cracking under the weight of what happened to Manuel or the guilt or the bad sleep. This was real, and it was spreading. Through the radio, through the tower, through whatever thin membrane separated normal Forest Service work from whatever the hell was happening on this mountain. I sat back down in the chair and stared at the radio. The green power light glowed steady. The red transmit light was dark. Outside, the ridge stayed empty. The burrito stayed on the step. The coin stayed in my pocket, warm against my thigh. And somewhere south, in the trees I couldn't see anymore, someone in a yellow shirt stood perfectly still, waiting. I decided to try pure obedience. That was all I had left that made any sense. At 6:30, after the sun dropped behind the west ridge and the temperature started falling, I pulled the coin out of my pocket. The metal was warm from sitting against my leg all day. I found a roll of duct tape in the top desk drawer, same drawer with the pens and first aid kit, and tore off a strip about 4 inches long. The tape made that ripping sound that echoed louder than it should have in the cabin. I pressed the coin flat against the laminated map on the desk, cartoon sun face down, and wrapped the tape around it twice. Then I peeled the whole thing off the map and got down on my knees next to the propane stove. The stove sat against the east wall on a metal drip tray. I had to lie flat on my stomach and reach underneath to the back corner where the wall met the floor. I pressed the taped coin and map scrap as far back as I could, felt it stick to the floorboards, and pulled my hand out. Dust came with it. My shoulder scraped the stove leg on the way back up. There. Gone. Hard to reach. I figured if I couldn't see it or touch it, maybe that'd break whatever Kellerman's warning meant. If you pick it up, it knows your hand. Well, I wasn't holding it anymore. I stood and brushed the dust off my shirt and jeans. My hands were steadier than they'd been all afternoon. Next, I checked the hatch. I crossed to the center of the cabin where the wooden hatch sat flush with the floor, hinges on the north side, iron bolt latch on the south. I'd thrown the bolt this morning after finding the burrito. Now I crouched and tested it, pushing down to make sure the bolt was seated all the way in the bracket. It was. Solid. I pulled up on the hatch handle anyway, just to confirm. The hatch didn't budge. Locked tight. After that, I lined up my gear by the cot. I pulled my duffel out from under the narrow bed and unzipped it, taking out my spare shirt, spare pants, jacket, and the paperback I'd bought in Silver City, some thriller about a detective I hadn't opened yet. I folded the clothes and stacked them on the floor next to the bed's metal frame. The jacket went on top. The book went on the desk next to the current logbook. Everything in its place, neat, controlled. I zipped the duffel and shoved it back under the bed. Then I sat at the desk and opened the logbook to a fresh page. I wrote the date at the top in careful print, not my usual half-cursive scrawl. I noted the 1800 radio check, on time, clear reception, Ruby on dispatch. I wrote down the temperature at 1800 hours, 51 degrees, and the wind speed 10 miles per hour steady from the northwest. I recorded visibility as excellent and cloud cover as 0%. I did not write anything about the person in the yellow Nomex shirt on the south ridge. I did not write anything about Station Zero or Ruby's warning to keep that name off open channels. At 9 p.m., I was supposed to do a weather log entry. High fire risk season meant hourly logs. I planned to do it exactly on time. No early, no late. Follow the schedule, follow the rules. That was the plan. I ate dinner at 7:15, canned beef stew heated on the propane stove, eaten standing at the north window while the sky turned purple over the ridges. I washed the pot in the rain barrel outside, hands going numb in the cold water, same as before. I came back in, dried the pot with a towel from the shelf, and put it back on the stove. I checked my watch. 7:43. I sat at the desk and waited. At 8:57, I pulled the logbook close and uncapped the pen, ready to write the 9 p.m. entry the second my watch ticked over. At exactly 9 p.m., the access bell rang once from below. I froze. Pen in hand, logbook open, body locked in place. The bell was mounted somewhere down on the tower frame. I'd never actually seen it, but I knew it was there from the knotted rope that hung next to the hatch inside the cabin. Someone below could pull the bell to signal the lookout. The lookout could ring it back to acknowledge, standard protocol for visitors or emergencies when radio contact wasn't available. The sound came up through the floorboards. Single clear note, brass or iron, something heavy. It rang out and faded into the wind. I didn't move. I kept the pen hovering over the logbook page, watching the second hand on my watch crawl forward. 30 seconds passed. Then the bell rang again. This one was closer. Not louder, but closer, like the sound was coming from a different place, like someone had climbed a landing between the first ring and the second and was testing the rope's weight as they went. I set the pen down carefully. My hand wanted to shake, but I didn't let it. The laminated rule card sat right there next to the logbook. I'd read it a dozen times since Naomi left it on the desk that first day. I scanned it now, eyes jumping to the 5th rule. Non-scheduled access signals. Do not acknowledge. Report at next standard check-in. That was clear. Don't ring back. Don't open the hatch. Just wait and report it to Ruby in the morning at the 0800 check. But under that clarity was the other thing. The old reflex. The guilt that had been sitting in my chest since March when I turned the forklift too fast and didn't wait for Manuel's signal, and heard the crash and the pallets coming down and Manuel screaming. The instinct that kicked in every time something went wrong. Rush toward it, fix it fast, don't wait, don't think, just move. Someone could be hurt, could have slipped on the stairs, could be a hiker who twisted an ankle on the trail and made it to the tower looking for help. Could be Naomi coming back to check on me after I mentioned Station Zero on the radio, and Ruby told me to shut up about it. I stood. The chair scraped back. The bell rope hung next to the hatch, thick knotted hemp looped through an iron ring bolted to a ceiling beam. I crossed the cabin in 4 steps. My hand reached for the rope. I stopped, fingers an inch from the knot. Kellerman's words came back. If you pick it up, it knows your hand. I'd already picked up the coin. I'd already picked up the burrito, even if I put it back. If I grabbed this rope, if I rang the bell, what would know? I pulled my hand back. I sat down on the floor right there, back against the wall next to the hatch, legs stretched out in front of me. I shoved my hands under my thighs and pressed down, pinning them. The urge to grab the rope didn't go away. It sat in my chest, hot and tight, the same way it had in the Avis yard when I saw the pallets starting to tip and Knew I should brake, but my foot was already on the gas trying to get clear. The same way it felt every time I thought about Manuel in physical therapy, rebuilding his knee, not answering my calls. I waited it out. I counted my breaths. In for 4. Out for 4. The bell didn't ring a third time. Instead, the smell started drifting up through the floorboards. Warm tortilla, cooked meat, melted cheese, the exact smell of the burrito I'd found on the 3rd step this morning, the one I'd left there and hadn't gone back to check on. It smelled good, comforting, the kind of smell that meant someone cared enough to make you food and wrap it up while it was still hot. I kept breathing, in for 4, out for 4. Then the smell shifted, same scent, but sour now. Rotten, like the meat had been sitting in the sun for days, and the tortilla had molted, and the foil had kept it all sealed in to ferment. I gagged. I pulled my shirt up over my nose and mouth, and kept my hands pinned under my legs, and didn't move toward the hatch. The smell came in waves. Good, then bad. Fresh, then spoiled. It cycled every 10 seconds or so, and I couldn't tell which version was real. Then the radio turned on by itself. No click this time, no relay snap. Just the static rising from silence, smooth and instant, like someone had turned a dial. I looked across the cabin at the desk. The green power light was on. The mute switch was down. I'd left it on mute since this afternoon after I talked to Ruby. The static cut out. Bear Mountain Lookout, this is District Ranger McCormick. Naomi's voice. Exact tone, exact cadence. Professional, clipped, no warmth. My truck slid off the access road approximately 2 miles below your position. I'm uninjured but unable to reach dispatch. I need you to ring the access bell so search and rescue can triangulate the tower location and reach me before dark. Acknowledge. I stared at the radio. The red transmit light wasn't on. The mute switch was still down. Naomi's voice came through again. Coleman, I know you're hearing this. Ring the bell. That's an order. Search and rescue is en route, but they need the acoustic signal to locate the tower in low visibility. Ring it now. My hands were still pinned under my thighs. I didn't move. Under the propane stove, something crackled. Not loud, just a soft scraping sound, paper on wood. Like something was dragging the taped map scrap I'd stuck back there. Like fingers were peeling the tape up from below. I kept my eyes on the radio. Naomi's voice had stopped. The static was back, low and steady. The crackling continued, slow, deliberate. The sound of the map being pulled inch by inch toward the edge of the stove where the light could reach it. I sat on the floor, hands pinned, shirt over my face, and didn't move toward the bell. I didn't ring the bell. Instead, I dropped to my knees and crawled toward the desk, hands flat on the floorboards, duffel bag scraping my shoulder as I passed the bed. My watch read 9:02. The bell had rung twice. I figured if 9 minutes worked last night, maybe it'd work again. Maybe that was the rule. I reached the desk, pulled myself up using the chair leg, and flipped the mute switch. The static cut to nothing. I sat with my back against the desk and turned my head so I faced the north window, not the hatch. I wasn't going to look at the hatch. My watch read 9:03. I started counting seconds in my head. 1 1,000, 2 1,000. That was it. Just count. The thumping started at 9:04. It came up through the floor directly under the hatch this time, not scattered around the cabin like before. Heavier, too. The first thump rattled the propane stove hard enough I heard the pot shift on the burner. The second one shook the desk behind me and something in the drawer slid forward. I kept counting. 47 1,000, 48 1,000. The tower frame groaned. Not wind noise. Actual timber stress. The kind you hear when a building settles wrong or a support beam takes too much weight. Each thump made the groan worse. The floor vibrated under my legs. My teeth rattled if I didn't clench my jaw. I kept my eyes on the north window. The glass reflected the propane lantern on the shelf behind me, just a soft yellow glow. I focused on that, counted. 112, 1,000. 113, 1,000. The bell rang a third time at 9:06. Then it didn't stop. It turned into short, rapid jingles, metal clapping against metal in bursts of 3 or 4 rings. Then a pause, then more. Someone was shaking the rope, not pulling it steady, shaking it hard and fast like they were pissed I hadn't answered. The thumping kept going under the floor in that same slow, deliberate beat, but now the bell was frantic. Ring, 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 pause, ring, 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 pause. My count fell apart. I tried to pick it back up. 201,000, or maybe 220. I didn't know. The whole cabin was shaking now. The cot scraped against the wall. The lantern on the shelf rattled in its bracket. I thought the tower might actually come apart, just shake loose and drop 40 feet with me inside. I pressed my hands over my ears and kept my face toward the north window. The reflection of the lantern blurred. I might have been crying, I'm not sure. At 9:11 the thumping stopped. The bell kept ringing for another 30 seconds, then it stopped too. The cabin went quiet except for wind outside and my own breathing. I pulled my hands away from my ears. My watch read 9:12, 9 minutes, close enough. I stayed on the floor for another minute, maybe 2. Then I crawled back to the radio and checked the mute switch. Still down, still silent. I left it that way. I sat at the desk and stared at the logbook. I was supposed to make the 9 p.m. weather entry. Temperature, wind speed, cloud cover. I didn't pick up the pen. My hand was shaking too hard and I didn't trust what I'd write. Instead, I focused on the one thing I could actually control, the coin. It was still taped under the stove. I'd put it there to get rid of it, to stop whatever Kellerman's warning meant. But it was still in the cabin, still close, still mine because I'd picked it up. That was the problem. I'd picked it up and now it knew my hand, whatever that meant, and hiding it under the stove wasn't enough. I needed it gone. Completely gone. Off the tower. Out of reach. I stood up and crossed to the propane stove against the east wall. It was a 2-burner unit, white enamel with rust spots, sitting on a metal frame about shin-high. I grabbed the frame on both sides and pulled. It scraped forward about 8 inches, metal legs loud against wood. I got on my knees and pressed my cheek against the floor, reaching back into the gap with my right hand. My fingers found the edge of the taped map scrap in the back corner. I pinched it and pulled. The tape peeled off the floorboard with a sticky ripping sound. I sat up with the coin still stuck to the map piece, cartoon sun face down, and didn't let my skin touch it. I needed a container, something I could seal, or at least close. I went to the shelf next to the fridge and grabbed an empty soup can from the recycling bag, Campbell's chicken noodle, label half peeled. I shook out a few drops of water and set it on the desk. Then I peeled the coin off the map, holding only the tape edges, and dropped it into the can. It hit the bottom with a thin metallic clink. I looked around for a lid. There wasn't one. I grabbed the duct tape from the drawer and tore off a long strip, pressed it over the can's mouth, then wrapped another piece around the rim. Not perfect. Good enough. Now I needed to get it off the tower. I wasn't climbing down in the dark, not with whatever was ringing that bell maybe still down there. But I had rope. I pulled open the bottom desk drawer and dug past the maps and batteries until I found a coil of yellow nylon cord, probably 50 feet, meant for emergency use or tying down shutters. I grabbed it and my pocket knife from my jacket pocket. Then I crossed to the hatch. I stood over it for a few seconds, looking at the iron bolt. I'd locked it this morning. Throwing that bolt had felt like the smartest thing I'd done since arriving. Now I was about to unlock it. My hands didn't shake. That surprised me. I thought they would. But I was doing something, fixing something, and that always steadied me, even when it shouldn't. I pulled the bolt up. It slid free with a metal scrape. I grabbed the hatch handle and lifted. cold air rushed in, and I smelled pine and granite and something else, something sweet and wrong. The burrito. It was still down there on the third step, rotting or staying warm or doing whatever the hell it was doing. I didn't look down. I hooked one end of the rope through the can's pull tab. It was one of those old-style cans with the triangle puncture opener, so there was a little metal tab on the side. I tied a double knot, pulled it tight, then fed the rope out through the hatch. The can dangled below the opening, swinging slightly. I kept feeding rope, hand over hand, lowering it past the platform, past the first landing. I couldn't see it anymore, but I felt the weight on the line. When I'd let out maybe 30 feet, the weight suddenly felt clear of the stairs, just swinging in open air. I pulled out my pocket knife, flipped open the blade, and sawed through the rope. It parted on the third stroke. The tension released. I heard the can drop, a faint tumbling sound, then a sharp clang when it hit rock somewhere below. Then nothing. I waited. 10 seconds. 20. The bell didn't ring. The thumping didn't start. The smell changed. The sweet, wrong burrito scent faded fast, replaced by clean, cold mountain air. Just wind and pine. Normal. I closed the hatch and threw the bolt again. Then I shoved the stove back against the wall, coiled the cut rope, and put it back in the drawer. My hands were still steady. I sat at the desk and opened the logbook. 9:43 p.m. I wrote the date, the time, and temperature 48 degrees, wind NW 8 mph, visibility excellent, cloud cover 0%. My handwriting looked normal. I closed the book. I didn't sleep much. I lay on the cot with my jacket on and my boots still laced, staring at the ceiling. The cabin stayed quiet. No bells, no thumps, no radio transmission. At some point, I must have dozed because I opened my eyes and it was dawn, gray light coming through the east window. I checked my watch. 6:17 a.m. I sat up, pulled on my jacket tighter, and walked to the desk. The radio's green light was still on, mute switch still down. I flipped it up. Static returned. I waited until 8 a.m. exactly, then keyed the microphone. Silver City Dispatch. This is Bear Mountain Lookout. Radio check. Ruby's voice came back after 2 seconds. Bear Mountain, go ahead. I took a breath. I'm requesting immediate relief. I've had odd activity up here, non-standard signals. I need someone to come up. Silence. 5 seconds. 10. Define odd activity, Coleman. I didn't say Station 0. I remembered her warning. Access signals after dark. Sounds under the structure. I followed mute protocol per the card, but I need relief. More silence. Then, copy. Stand by. The static hissed for maybe 3 minutes. Then a different voice came on. Naomi. Bear Mountain, this is McCormick. What's your status? I'm fine, no injury, but I need to come down. Acknowledged. I'm en route with support. ETA 2 hours. Do not leave the tower. Confirm. Confirmed. Stay on standard checks. McCormick out. I sat at the desk and waited. I made coffee. I ate a can of pears. I logged the weather at 0800. Temperature 51, wind calm, sky clear. At 10:23 I heard an engine. I went to the west window and saw Naomi's white truck climbing the last switchback and behind it a Green Forest Service pickup. They parked at the base. 3 people got out. Naomi and 2 others in field greens. One was a big guy with a beard, maybe 40. The other was a woman, younger, with dark curly hair and a braid. I opened the hatch and waited at the top of the stairs. Naomi climbed first. She reached the platform and looked at me. Her face was flat, unreadable. You all right? Yeah. She stepped into the cabin. The other 2 followed. The bearded guy nodded at me. Dylan Bates. Engine boss. The woman gave a small wave. Julie Johnson. Forestry tech. Naomi crossed to the desk and picked up the logbook. She flipped through it. Read my entry about the radio glitch. Read the weather logs. Then she opened the bottom drawer and pulled out Kellerman's old log. She found the August 23rd entry and read it without expression. If you pick it up, it knows your hand. She looked at me. What did you pick up? A coin, on the stairs, first day. Where's it now? I dropped it, last night, off the tower. Dylan was checking the windows, the shutters, the propane stove. Julie stood near the hatch watching me. Naomi closed both logbooks and set them on the desk. You said I slid off the road, I said, when you picked me up. You told me about sliding off on the way back down in March. Naomi's eyes narrowed. I never said that. You did. You said the road gets bad and you slid off once coming back down. Coleman, I've never slid off this road. I've driven it 60 times. My chest went cold. I'd heard her say it. I remembered her saying it, but her face told me she hadn't. Show me where you dropped the coin, she said. We went down the stairs, all 4 of us. I led them to the base of the tower and pointed to the area below the platform, maybe 15 feet out where I thought the can would have landed. Dylan and Julie spread out and searched. They checked the ground, the rocks, the brush. I looked too. We searched for 20 minutes. There was nothing. No can. No rope. No torn end of yellow nylon cord hanging from the platform. The ground wasn't disturbed. No impact mark. No coin. Julie looked at Naomi. Nothing here. Naomi turned to me. The burrito. You said you found a burrito. I pointed at the 3rd step. We climbed up. The step was bare. Clean wood. No foil, no food, no grease stain. Naomi told Dylan and Julie to check the tower frame and structure. They descended and started a perimeter inspection. Naomi stood with me on the platform. You're coming down, she said. You're off duty effective now. I know what I saw. I believe you saw something, but you're not staying up here. She looked at me and her voice softened slightly. You've been under a lot of stress. The incident in March. Manuel, you came up here to get away from that, and it followed you. That happens. This wasn't stress. Maybe not, but you're still coming down. She gestured toward the cabin. Pack your gear. I went inside and stuffed my duffel. 2 shirts, pants, jacket, the paperback I hadn't opened. It took 3 minutes. When I came out, Dylan and Julie were back at the base. Dylan called up, structures sound, no damage. Naomi drove me down the mountain in her truck. Dylan and Julie followed in the other vehicle. Nobody talked. When we reached the ranger station in Silver City, Naomi walked me inside and sat me in a chair outside her office. She made a phone call. I heard her say unauthorized transmissions and possible stress hallucination and psych eval recommended. She came out 20 minutes later and handed me a paper. You're on administrative leave pending evaluation. Ruby filed an incident report. You'll get a call within 48 hours to schedule. I'm not crazy. Nobody said you were, but you reported things we can't verify, and you're showing signs of acute stress response. This is protocol. I took the paper. She drove me to a motel on the edge of town and paid for 3 nights. Then she left. I sat on the motel bed with my duffel on the floor and the incident paper on the nightstand. My hands were steady. That was the worst part. They'd been steady since I dropped the coin, since I'd fixed the problem. Except I hadn't fixed anything. I'd just proven I couldn't trust my own hands. Couldn't trust what they picked up or put down or what they'd do next time something told me to reach for it. The coin was gone. But Kellerman's warning was right. It knew my hand. And now, that was in my record. Permanent. I lay back on the bed and stared at the ceiling. The room smelled like bleach and old carpet. Outside, traffic hummed on the highway. I closed my eyes. I didn't sleep.